So here we are at our stove, and the first thing we need to get going is this mushroom sauce. I like sesame oil, I like olive oil, all really nice oils that don't... Dark sesame oil actually is very nice for this dish. All we do here is get our pan hot a little bit. It was warming up, so I'm going to add our garlic. You can hear it sizzle a little bit. That's good. That means that it's warm. And then I'm going to add... Garlic actually can burn really quickly, so you need to stay on top of it here. Just going to let it cook a little bit and add our onions almost instantly, and then they'll saute together. This bowl was my grandmother's from Nebraska, so it's one of my most favorite bowls. What we want to do is add a little bit of shoyu, because the shoyu is going to bring out the water in the onions, just a tiny little bit. You always want to cook onions, no matter when you're cooking them, with the lid off, so that the gaseousness that sometimes onions can cause kind of just aerates away. So whenever I'm cooking onions, I always cook them with the lid off. And I'm going to cook them, they're almost clear now. So now we can just add our mushrooms. Doesn't matter what order they go in. Just gonna put them on top. You'll notice too that I don't usually stir a lot when I'm cooking. I just kind of set vegetables in and let them cook in their own juices and at their own time. Because if I'm stirring, then I'm releasing a lot of the energy that's building up in the food. And the goal of this is that the food that I eat is as strong as possible. So I don't want to mess with it too much. And then I'm going to season up, put a little bit of shoyu again on top to help those mushrooms lose some of their water. Okay, now that our mushrooms are cooking a little bit, I'm going to start our fried tofu. I like to use a cast iron pan whenever I'm frying tofu, because the cast iron already has a seal on it, and so it won't, the food will just fry a little bit easier. I need a little bit of oil, and I'm just going to place the tofu again. This pan is warmed up beforehand. Just put the tofu around there. If you are on a low oil diet, you can easily cook up tofu in the same way, just in water. And you can even do your mushroom sauce just in water too. You don't need to use oil here. You can really become a powerful cook when you adjust your cooking for different people's conditions. A child would use less salt on their food, less shoyu. So what I like to do is season lightly at the stove. I wish that you could see that.
Beautiful.
Okay. And what I'm going to do is add the water now, that it's going to be the broth for the gravy. This is our gravy, right? I'm just adding it again just until the vegetables are barely covered. I want to keep as much of the flavor of the vegetables in this broth, so it's a real rich, hearty broth. So we're going to just let that cook for a little while, and then it'll get strong and strong and stronger in its own broth. But what I'll do while it's cooking is I'll add our basil. This is dried basil. Again, this one is non-irradiated basil. They are irradiating foods these days to prolong the shelf life. But what happens in the way that that works is they can irradiate the food, and then it totally zaps the food so that it doesn't go bad on the shelf. Well, by zapping the food, then we are eating a less alive food, obviously, right? Okay. While our tofu is cooking here, our broth is cooking, our red beets are finished. So I'm going to take them out and put them in the jar. But I would want them to cool a little bit before I would put them in the jar to make our pickle. Isn't that beautiful? You can see, you know, how beautiful that will look on our plate when we're finished. Okay. So these would need to cool. Now, if the tofu doesn't want to be flipped, then it's not ready to be flipped. So you don't want to be scraping it. I don't know if you can get a close-up of that there, how nice and golden. So on our plate, it's really essential that you have something creamy, you have something crunchy. And it's nice when we have something that we can actually kind of crunch into. Now, if I was really struggling with turning these, I wouldn't turn them yet. I just let them cook a little while longer, and then they would flip real easily. Okay, and once they've flipped over, again, almost just a little drop of shoyu on each one to give it a little bit of flavor. And if I had the marinade, I could do the marinade. Or what I could even do, and I think I'm going to actually grab it quickly, is some ginger. And so I'd like to show you this ginger that I'm going to squeeze on top of this. This is fresh ginger. I love to use ginger in my cooking because, like I mentioned, in eating, we need to think about the textures, we need to think about the taste. So ginger imparts a sharp taste on the food. So all you do is you grate it on the small side of the grater. Get a nice amount here. Get a little ping pong ball size, and then you just squeeze it. And if I was seasoning a stew, I would just squeeze it right over my stew. Just squeezing that. Can you see the liquid there?
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
It's coming. So can you see the juice? It's just coming right out of our ginger, and there's a lot of juice that comes out of this little dried root. You would have no idea. Okay, I'm going to use kuzu. Kuzu is a root starch. It's similar to cornstarch, except it's the whole root of the kuzu plant. And kuzu is grown on volcanic ash soil. So it's very high in minerals. So again, I'm not just thickening this sauce with an empty caloried cornstarch. I'm using a very strong, life-supporting, vitality-supporting thickener. It's very rich in minerals. And minerals, again, alkalinize the blood. So whenever I use kuzu, I just make sure that my liquid is boiling, and I just pour it in slowly, and it slowly thickens. And you go to the consistency that you want. And it's important that you break it up. I broke up those clumps with my fingers for a reason. Because if you don't, then you can very easily get a clumpy sauce. And that's not nice at all. So here we have a nice gravy, nice sauce. The last thing I'm going to add to this is two things, actually. I'm going to add some tahini nut sesame butter. I'm going to eyeball this, but you might want to measure it. I'm just adding about a tablespoon. Again, just for a little bit of a deeper, richer flavor. Just stir that in. And the very last thing, this sauce is basically finished, this gravy is finished, but I want to give it a little bit of a pow, a little bit of a splash at the end. So I just am going to add a little bit of lemon juice. Just a tiny little bit. We'll just kind of lighten it up a little bit. Okay. So here's our meal. We'll make up a quick plate. We have our rice udon noodles. If you can do those, a whole grain noodle of some kind, even a thinner noodle, a thinner egg noodle of some kind, but I really like the whole grain noodle because then you're getting all the nutrients compared to an empty white flour noodle. Here's our gravy or sauce. If you like a creamier sauce, you can always just puree it in the blender. Here are our sweet and sour red beets. Garnish our plate with those. Our fried tofu slices. Put those on our plate. And the last thing is our salad with carrot flowers. Put that there too. Get some of those carrot flowers up on the top so that you have the color on top. Remember, people eat with their eyes first, so you want it to be beautiful. There's our plate. Let me show you here. If you have spent all this time making this nice food, I just want to remind you to chew your food at least 20 times with every bite, because the digestive enzymes for carbohydrates are in the mouth, and so you need to get that process going by chewing. By chewing, you take less of the burden off of your digestive system. And the last thing is to say a prayer of any kind, just in gratefulness for all of this.